Welcome to the fastest daf in town. Today on Masechtas Menachos daf Nun Aleph. We are going to begin on Nun Aleph Amud Aleph, the very top line, with the word Rava. So we learned in yesterday's daf a few opinions that when it comes to the Chaviti Kohen Gadol, in which he would bring half in the morning, half in the afternoon, he had to bring the whole thing and then divide it and then give half in the morning, half in the afternoon, that when it comes to the kneading, the shaping, the baking, that had to be done in the Azara. And the key element we're going to focus on here is it's Doicha Shabbos. And on yesterday's daf, we mentioned a few opinions as to why that's the case. Now we're going to continue with Rava's answer. So let's begin with that. So Rava says as follows. He says, the pasuk says al machvas, that it needs to be on a thin pan. Malamed shetu'una kli. Obviously, the fact that it says this means it needs to be in a kli sharis. Navi afalam esmol. If you cooked it yesterday already and not on Shabbos, then ifsalei belina. Then there'll be a psulina. TA 30 right away. So heichayov Rava al machvas. How do we learn out from that pasuk? The afias minchas chavitin doicha Shabbos, because al machmas malamed shetuna kli, vi afi esmol. Then it's puzzle belina. Okay, that's the last question on that test, which we had 7.5 years ago. Let's move on. So Tani Gavas to Rabba. We also have a brace which supports this sheet that says al machmas malamed shetuna kli. Okay, so then it talks about b'shemen. Now, when it comes to the Minchas Chavitin, it's necessary for you to have a requisite of oil. There must be a certain amount of oil. And this is going to be question 1. Kamalugi shemen noisenli saron. How much oil is put for each isaron depending on what type of mincha it is. So the question is by Minchas Chavitin. Well, look in the Torah what it is. Promise doesn't say. So we learn out the fact this is b'shemen is just l'hoisav l'shemen, that you're supposed to have more oil when it comes to the minchas chavitin than other mincha offerings. The enio de kama, we don't know how much. So hari done, we can make the following connection. Nemar kan shemen b'nemar loholan b'minchas nesachim shemen. It also says regarding the minchas nesachim, that with regard to the Menachot Nesachim, it also says the word shemen there. Okay, so, and Rashi quotes the pasuk in Shmos Chavtes, the Yisaron sos bul b'shemen, and the Yisaron of flour, it should be mixed with oil, ksis roiva hehin, a fourth of a hin, minchas nichsi tamid ksiv, fine. Fine. So when it comes to the Minchas Nesachim, it's referring to the libations that accompany the carbon tamid. So it says the word shemen there. And we know that when it's talking about the Minchas Nesachim, alhon shleishas lugan li sadoin, we know that that's the case because it says revias a hin. And a quarter of a hin, says Rashi, 3 lugan, the hin yud beis lugan. Because 3 lugin and a hin is 12 lugin. So if a hin is 12 lug, so it says roiva hahin. So therefore we derive that 12 over 3, it's supposed to be 12 over 4, then it's supposed to be 3 lugin to an isaron. Okay. So that's the basic idea, because again the pasuk says v'isaron sos b'ul b'shemen kasis roiva hahin. Fine. So we learn out clearly when it comes to the minchas nesachim that it's 3, and that's what it says over here. Minchas, does it mention minchas nesachim? No. Okay, that's not one of the questions. So afkan shleishas lugin lisaron. So therefore we're going to learn out from the minchas nesachim. So too when it comes to the minchas chavitin, that it's 3 lugin to an isaron, which is what we end up saying, that when it comes to minchas, right, so minchas tamidim is shlishas lugin to isaron, which is minchas, which also minchas nesachim, because that actually is the question. The minchas nesachim is 3 lugin to an isaron, so too when it comes to Minchas Chavitin is also 3 lugin to an isaron. So that's how we connect it. So Gemara says, well, 1 second, how do we know for sure that that's the case? So that Avkan Shosh is looking at Isaron. No Klachla Derech, maybe the other way around. Nemerkan Shemen Nemer B'Minchas Nedava Shemen. When a person gives a mincha as a free will offering, so it also says the word shemen there. But Mal Holan Lug Echad, so Avkan Lug Echad, right? So maybe just like when it comes to Minchas Nedava, it's definitely only 1 lug per isaron of flour. So too, maybe we say the same thing as by Minchas Chavitin. So the question is, should we compare Minchas Chavitin to the Minchas Nedava, or should we compare it to the Minchas Nesachim? So the Gemara says like this: Neil Midaima, done in Tavshat mitavshat. Okay, this is obviously an acronym for Tadir or Simon. Tadir. What is Tadir? So Rashi says that the Minchas Chavitin is tamid. Comes, it's often, or Tadir. Yeah, because we know the Minchas Chavitin is brought in the morning and the afternoon, and the Minchas Nesachim comes also because it's brought together with the Karban Tamid, right? So therefore, it's also all the time. So that makes sense that we should compare the two. It says Rashi, but Minchas Nedava lo dachi Shabbos v'toma the whole Karban she'ein lo zman kavua ino daicha Shabbos v'toma. Okay, let's keep reading the Gemara, and I'll translate that part of the Rashi. So daicha Shabbos to daicha toma. V'ein danin tavshat mishenu tavshat. So basically, what do we have? That when it comes to the tamid, or the minchas nesachim, which accompanies the tamid, Karban tamid, is similar in many ways to minchas chavitin. That their tamid happens a lot. It's tadir happens often. It's daicha Shabbos and daicha, as we already saw, which is the reason why I bring this down also. And it's also daicha toma. We say toma hutubit sibur when it comes to these things, because it's a Karban sibur. Maybe they're around. Done in Yagil, mi Yagil. What's that? Yachid beglal atzmai. So what does that mean? So Nedava is a yachid, that's an individual, and the Minchas Chavitin is by the one person, by the Kohen Gadol. That's a yachid. It's not a tzibor like the Karban Tamid, like the Minchas Nesachim. Beglal atzmai. Also, it's something which comes by itself. Says Rashi, uba beglal atzma de ein ba im hazavach. When it comes to Minchas Tamid, right, the Minchas Nesachim, right, the Minchas Nesachim, however, there's not a lot of space here, comes with the Karban Tamid. So it's not the same. So maybe we can't compare it to Minchas Chavitin. Minchas Chavitin is just a mincha. There's no carbon that comes together with it. Not only that, there's a yain levina, and there's also the notion of the levina, the frankincense. The Minchas Nesachim, there is no levina, but when it comes to Minchas Nedava, as well as Minchas Chavitin, there is. So maybe we cannot compare it. They ain't done in Yagil, Mishin Yagil. So Rabbi Shmuel, Benoshel, Rabbi Yochanan ben Abrayka, Eimer, he says, you have a good point. He says, Rashi, Hoyev, lo asked Medina, you can't learn it out through this logic of comparing the two, so therefore we'll have to resort to a pasuk. So Eimer says like this, Soiles Minchas, Mincha Tamid, so it says that the flour, Minchas, is Tamid, it's something which is frequent. So what do we learn out from there? Harihi Lacha, Minchas Tamidin. The fact that it says the word Tamid, it obviously shows that the Minchas Chavitin, right? This Minchas Chavitin, which is what this pasuk is going on, it says the word Tamid. So obviously the fact that it says that, that's a reason enough to be able to link it. Therefore, Ma Minchas Tamidin Gimel Lugin Li Sarain Minchas Tinmidim, which is Minchas Nesachim, is 3 Lugin to an Isaron. So Afzu Gimel Lugin Li Isaron. So that's how we end up learning it, and therefore we're not going to learn out from Minchas Nedava. Okay. Shemen Omer Ribakan Shemen V'Ribam B'Minchas Kvasim Shemen. It says over here Shemen, and also by the Minchas Kvasim. It also says Shemen. Let's look at Rashi. Ribakan Kid Amran L'El B'Shemen L'Hoisev La Shemen. We're going to have to add oil. Riba Minchas Nesachim Shemen. Gimel Lugin L'Yisarin Dahainu Riboy the Minchas Nedava Leika El Lug. You can't. There's no. It's only one, so there's no riva, which going to be a point we're going to stress again. So he's saying, so let me read that again. So again, that's how we learn it out. It's talking, we compare it to Minchas Nesachim, so to Minchas Chavitin, this is how much oil. So and also, when it comes to the mincha that accompanies parim and elim, also it's shemen, but over there malohon shnei lugin lisar nafkan shnei lugin lisar, and as the pasuk says in Parsha Shlachacha regarding the minchas nichse parim ve'elim, it says v'hikriv al ben habakar soilish shloisha yisaron b'lu b'shemen chatziahin. So it says chatziahin, which is vav lugin shtaim lisaron. Fine. So you can see that's how we learn it out. So this basically answers the entirety of question 1, which when it comes to Minchas Chavitin, we Lamaskana will compare it to the Minchas Nesachim or Minchas Tamid, that it's 3 lugin to an isaron. However, when it comes to Minchas Nedava, it's only 1, but now we're saying, well, maybe 2. So Nero Midaima. Done in Mincha Haba Isarain, Mincha Haba Bi Isarain. It makes more sense to compare when it comes to the Minchas Chavitin to the Minchas Nesachim. The Ein done in Mincha Haba Mi Isaron, Mincha Haba Beis V'Gimel Israinim. So when it comes to this, there's a lot more that's being brought. So therefore, it's not comparable to the Minchas Par Ve'elim, and therefore we're going to compare instead to the Minchas Nesachim, also known as Minchas Talmud. So Haguvakash, the whole thing really is hard to understand. First of all, Amrit b'shemen, the fact that it says b'shem is l'hoisel l'shemen. You have to have more oil than everything else. So v'hadar tani nemer kan shemen nemer b'minchas nedava shemen. Understand, minchas nedava is only 1, so there's no increase. So why would you even have the havamina to think that by the minchas that the minchas chavitin should be 1? We already learned that's supposed to be more than 1. So Rabbi mantan b'shemen l'hoisel shemeni. This whole drasha, maybe at least in this havamina, that maybe it was 1 that we could compare it to minchas nedava. It says l'hoisif. That's not l'divrei hakayil. So that's only l'fishitas Rav Shimon. V'il nemer kaimer uvedina man kamahader Rabbi Shmuel. Okay. Rav Huna b'reid Rabbi Yeshua Aimer Kul Rabbi Shmuel b'Naishor Rav Yochanan and Breika. Really, it's all like him. V'achan karma. This is how you're supposed to read it. B'shem, and the fact that the pasuk says b'shem is l'hoisif l'shemen. De'ik l'kavua shemen l'tzarich. If the whole purpose is to tell us that we need oil at all, that pasuk does. We don't need that. We already know that you would have to bring oil anyway. Kivan dechsiba al machvas. Since it says it's referring to a mincha which is al machvas on this thin pan, so kiminchas machvas damya, right? Which we already know that a minchas machvas needs oil. So the fact that you have this pasuk is already coming to. There's no chiddush except to tell you hoisef. Maybe it's just really just telling that you need to put oil and maybe not l'hoisef. De'ilo kasav rachmanan b'shemen, because if it didn't say that, havamina to have minchas chayte. So not every mincha offering has oil. For example, minchas chayte, minchas kanais, we find oil is not put. No levina, no oil, right? Because we don't want it to be beautified. We want to make a mahudar. So maybe it's the same thing by minchas, by this mincha as well. So by the minchas chavitin, even though why would you think to compare it to a minchas chayte? Okay, you have to think about what the havamina is with that. But so hadar amar, that's why it says shemen to tell you to havi namil kavul shemen. So taka that the minchas chavitin taka also needs to have oil, and don't think to compare it to the minchas chayte. So and therefore maybe it's not l'hoisef. Teisi medina v'don dina v'lo asil. So maybe you can just learn it out through the logic. The Yasser Chakra, and we need the pasuk with Sodas Mincha Tamid Kimisayim Rabbi Shmuel as he completed Milsei. Rabbi Omer Kula Rav Shimon. Really, the whole sheet is everyone's like Rav Shimon. The Ilu Nemer Kaimer. He's just saying if it didn't say it, it means that you actually have to have more oil because the Ilu Kabbalah Shemen Lotzarch, as we already said, you don't need to pasuk to tell you that you need to have oil. We already know. We already know that certainly it will need oil because it says machvas, and machvas has oil. Actually, yomer b'shemen, even if it doesn't say oil, yeshli bedin v'dandina lo asile, but you can't learn it out from the logic. V'atzrocha b'shemen. Therefore, we need the word shemen to basically tell us that to be told hoisa. So hadar oimetiyavi kiminchas parim ve'elim. And then we asked the kasha, well, maybe it should be like the parim elim, parim and elim, which is 2 and not 3. So hadar Omar, that's what we said. Done in, as we continue with Beis, mincha haba isarin v'chul. So basically, it's just going through the shakavatari. We don't have to like rehash it out, but that's the basic idea behind that. Okay. All right. Let's see the next Mishnah. So the first Mishnah that we saw told us that when it comes to the Kohen Gadol, he has to bring an entire mana. Now, let's say he didn't have, he died. He did the morning one, he died. So a new Kohen Gadol is appointed, so he has to bring a full mana, and then he only takes half of that. And his half, and the Kohen Gadol who died, his half is L'beis HaSreifa after it received a psul of lina. So let's say lo mina kohen acher tachtav. Let's say he died, but we didn't have a chance to appoint the new Kohen Gadol on that day. So now we have a problem. We still have to bring the minchas chavitin on the afternoon. So Michel mi hoisa kriva. Who do we get it from? So in that situation, Rav Shimon Omer Michel Tzibor. It comes from the communal funds. Rabbi Yehuda Omer Michel Yarshim. Actually, it will come from the heirs of the Kohen Gadol who died. The Shlema Haisa Kriba, but everyone holds, as we saw before, that it always has to be Shalom. You don't take his half or your half, as the Gemara is going to explain again here. Tanubah. So Kohen Gadol Shemes, he died. V'lo min Kohen Acher Tachtav, and there was no one who was appointed. So, but we still have to bring the afternoon offering. So Manayin Shitehei Min Chasu Kriba Mishel Yarshim. So how do we know again it's a machlokas that it should come from the Yarshim of the Kohen Gadol who died? Talmud Lemer of HaKohen HaMashiach Tachtav, and the Kohen Gadol who replaces him Mibana from his children Yasa Yisa shall be brought. So Yachli Yakrevenu Chetzoyin. So you would think that maybe he only has to bring half. Talmud Lemer Oisa Kula V'lo Chetzia. Devar Rabbi Yehuda. So the Kohen Gadol, the new Kohen Gadol, is the one who has the obligation to have to bring it. However, says Rashi, when it says Mibana V'yasa Oisa, is the Mishel Yarshim Kariva Ad Yamud Achar. It just means that the new Kohen Gadol will have to do it, which is mashma that until that new Kohen Gadol comes, it has to come from the possessions of the heirs. Now Shimon Omer, he learns it from the pasuk that says Chok Oilam. That's a chayk. So what do we learn from there? It means Mishel Oilam. The fact is, it should come from the Welt, from the world, which is referring to the tzibor that is taken from the Trumas Halishka funds. And then the pasuk says Kolil Tokter, that it must be completely burnt, has to be completely consumed. Shedei Kula B'Hakdaira, that the entire thing should be burnt. Says Rashi. And on this we have question TB3, possibly. Let's look at question Tanan. Lomina Kohen Achar. If there's no other Kohen Gadol, Rav Shimon Omer Mishel Tzibur Kriva. Take it from there. Textiv Chachol Mishel Oilam. Kolil Tokter. But because it came from the Tzibur and not from Kohen Gadol, it has to be completely burnt. Ma habir kula b'haktayr. What does that mean? It has to be completely burnt. So on this Rashi says Shlo yasim min shirayim l'achila. First of all, it tells you that there's no shirayim, right? That it's not, as I wrote, hashireha lo shayach l'koyin b'minchas chavitin, because it's since it came from the tzibor, right? Since it came from the tzibor, so it's the shirayim will not be eaten. Okay, and then Rashi says another interpretation. Lishnachrina shitru shleimas. The whole thing has to be burned. Full chatzoy, not half. Kozman shikriva mishal tzibur da shleima lepligi. So I wrote Vigam im hayorshim sarchel havias hachavitin b'makom. No, that's not the answer. Again, this is straight from Rashi. So the other answer is that shiaktiru shleima. I'll just write that shiaktiru shleima. Okay, that has to be completely. I'll just write v'lo l'chatzayin. Okay, so it has to. You have to take a full amount from the tzibor, and the whole thing has to be completely burnt. Okay, let me just add. That's a new note. Okay, good. So that is TB3. Okay, that's going to be it for all the questions for today. So now let's just keep on moving. So that's what Rashi says. That's what it means that the whole thing is completely burnt. Are you telling me it's coming to tell us this din when it comes to the Kohen Gadol? We need this pasuk for something totally different. It says Zeh carbon Aaron Uvanav. This is the carbon for Aaron the Kohen Gadol and his children. The day that they are anointed. So Yachli who are Uvanav Akrivin carbon Echad. You would think that they should bring one carbon. Talmud Leimer Asher Yakribul Hashem Aaron Bifnei Atzmo Uvana Bifnei Atzmon. It's not enough for them all just to bring one carbon together. No, each one of them has an obligation to have to bring it themselves. Says Rashi L'Shem Chinuch Oisa Yoim. Now, the day, right, on the first day of service, right, the first day of Avoda. So for the Kohen, he has to do this inaugurational process, and he has to bring his own carbon. Banav il Kohanim Hedyoitais. So Banav il Kohanim Hedyoitais. It means that even a Kohen Hedyot has the obligation when he starts, as Rashi says, Nischanech la'avoda ba'oisa yoim hayamakar b'isaron. He has to bring this special measure. Okay, so there's another opinion. This is only we're talking about the miluyim, but not for Ladaris. But Pashup Shad is referring to a new Kohen Hedyot. Even a Kohen Hedyot, he has to go through the process of bringing an offering on his first day. So Kohanim Hedyotos, Kohanim Gedolim. Maybe it's referring to, I know it says Kohanim Gedolim, Kohen Gadol means Kohen Gadol of future generations, all of them. Mibanav, Kohen Gadol Amar. The pasuk already says Kohen Gadol. Why does it say Banav El Kohanim Idiotos? So Im Kain Lichtav Kra HaKohen HaMashiach Tachtav Banav Yaseh. So my Mibanav Shmamina Tarti. So actually, that was the question, right? So how could you tell me that this is coming to tell us this din of if he dies, that who brings the afternoon offering with the Mitzibur Mishal Yarshim? We really learn out to teach us this other din, that when it comes to chinuch, that there's separate karbonos that are brought by the Kohen, even by a Kohen Hedyot. Okay, Shema Min Tarti. Rav Shimon Hay Oisa Mayo. What does he do with them? Miboil Kohen Gadol Shemes. The Kohen Gadol dies. Umino Achar Tachtav. This is the Mishnah we saw before, not today, but yesterday. The Kohen Gadol dies, and someone else is replacing him. Shlo Yavi Chatzi Yisrael Nebesos. Okay, what happened was like this: the Kohen Gadol brought the morning one. He split it in half. He did it. He had a money split in half. He brought half of it of the Menachot Chavitin in the morning. Then he died. So the afternoon wasn't brought. So the new Kohen Gadol has to take a full mana and split it. Now, because of that, he doesn't just take half from his house. Shal Rishon, and certainly he can't just take the other half of the Kohen Gadol who died. Rather, he has to take his own. So v'tevila min machatzitza. Why don't you learn out from that? So vav lo darsh, because he doesn't learn out from the vav. So what does he do? Because chaka according to the sheet of Reb Shimon, is to sell mishal oilam. That in that situation where the Kohen Gadol dies, you want to replace a new Kohen Gadol, that the din is that you have you have to still do it, but it comes from Sibor funds. But what does he do? Who says it comes from Yarshim? So Mayavalei, so Chuka Oilam Tehei Koil. So Chuka Oilam Tehei, which basically, as Rashi says, Shitehei Mitzvazu no Hegos Adiris. It's just telling you that this is a law that wasn't just for that generation, but was all for future generations. Kol Tikto Lamli. So what does he say? That whole thing has to be burnt if it came from Yarshim. And boy, look at Asanya. Ainli Ela El Yaina Minchas Kohen Gadol B'Kolil Toktar. I only know when it comes to the Chavitin. That's written in the pasuk originally. It says Savas Aaron, and then it says kol talk there, and then it says kol minchas koin kol tieh, that every mincha of a koin is supposed to be burnt. The mishtoi minchas nedavasoi, it comes to a minchas nedava as opposed to like a mincha of a koin, of a non-koin. So there's, as we know, the kamitz is burnt and on the mizbech, and then the shirayim are eaten by the kohen, but not when it comes to the mincha of a kohen, it's completely burnt. So that is the din. So minchas kohen gadol b'kol takter v'tachtayim minchas kohen hedged b'loy ta'ichel, you can't eat it. So manayin litin es homer shel zeh b'zeh v'es homer shel zeh b'zeh tamal lemer kol gzer shava nemer kan kol nemer hol kol. It says it by the kohen gadol, says by kohen hedged. What do we learn? Makan b'kol takter, the whole thing. Afal holan b'kol takter, the whole thing. Mal holan litin loisa say al chilasai, and one is a loisa say because it's a lav, that if you would eat it, that of the kohen, that taka would be over a lav. So Avkan litin loisa sel chilasai. V'savar Rav Shimon Mishal Tzibor. So Rav Shimon, who said again in our Mishnah that it goes to Mishal Tzibor, diraisa. Does he taka learn because he apparently he does hold it's a din diraisa that it comes from the Tzibor's funds, because the pasuk says chakoylam. Is it really true that he learns that from a din deraisa? But tanan Rav Shimon shiva devarim hiskinu beistin. There are 7 things which is brought down in Masechta Shkolim in Perik Mo'is Shenimsu that were instituted by the Rabbanan. Now, the fact that it was a takana beistin, it obviously wasn't a din deraisa, which is going to be the kasha. One of them is this, and the Gemara here elaborates on them. So look at Rashi. Hasam koi de katani il. Let's say you have an animal that's found in Yerushalayim, Migdal A there, Ukimidata, and its surroundings, Ruach, in every direction. So is Zacharim or oilless, because typically a carbon oil is a Zachar. So if you would find the animal there, we can assume it was a carbon. The cave is Shlomim, Berishayim Mamash. So let's just read this whole Rashi. Berishayna, originally Mamashkinan S. Maitza Lohayvin Nesachim, they would actually have a mashkin until you brought the Nesachim. Ashu Menichin Oisa Ubarchin, and they ran away. So Niskinu Basin Shehin Nisacheha Karivin Mishel Tzibor, okay, which is basically what we just said before. The Kaimer Rav Shimon, because basically they're not going to pay it otherwise, so therefore it was instituted Mishel Tzibor. The Kaimer Rav Shimon Zayin Devarim Hiskinu Basin V'Zesh She'amru Echad Mehen V'Adim Afarish L'Inach Sheish. He explains the other 6, etc. The Avi Kachavim Mishalech Karbonosam, that even Avi Kachavim can send out karbonos, as it's brought down in Perik Elu Menachos. We'll see that later on. Davayin Gimel, it says Ish Matam Avi Ish Ish Ravos Avi Kachavim. That an Avi Kachavim, which is really a beautiful idea, is that the Beis HaMikdash was not specifically geared only for Jews, right? Even for an Avi Kachavim, they can bring the Darm and the Davis. All right, so let's look in the Gemara, and we're going to go back and forth on this Rashi. So, what are these 7 takanas? And of course, the main point is that this is one of them. So, Avi Kachavim sheshalach olasim, that he's an Avi Kachavim is able to bring sheshalach, that he's able to bring karbanos olasim ibn nesiyam shalach iman nesachim. Kriva Mishaloi. So if he brings Nesachim, the value of Nesachim, so you can be makar of it. V'im lav Kriva Mishal Tzibur. If not, it comes from the Tzibur fund. V'chein ger, so too it comes to a ger who has no yarshim, shemes. V'haniach zvachim, and he has karbanos. Yeshul Nesachim Karivin Mishalov, he has other possessions, he can rock them from himself. Imlav Karivin Mishal Seymour, but tonight based in who Kohen Gadol Shemes, and also when a Kohen Gadol dies, Volo Mina Kohen Achatachtav, this is the Farish right here. Tonight based in, it's a condition, it was an institution, that if he died and we didn't appoint a Kohen Achatachtav, Shdei Minchasa Karivin Mishal Tzibor, that the Minchas Chavitin of the afternoon can be brought Mishal Tzibor. So therefore it's a kasha. We see it's only the Rabbanan, right? So it's not deraisa, right? It's not a din deraisa. It's a din derabanan clearly. So Amar Rabbi Shnei Tekanos Havi. There's 2. Deraisa mihat tzibur. Originally, it was that the din of collecting for this mincha was from the tzibur. That I agree. However, kivan dechazu, once they saw deka midchaka lishka, once we started seeing that the lishka was lishka sagosis was being, the monies were being taken out, especially that a lot of kohanim godolim taka died because they were not the biggest tzaddikim over there. It says Rashi Shai Paischin Hashkal Belishka Lafisha Kol Shana, every single year. Hayusrichin Bekach. We had to keep doing this. As Rashi quotes the Gemara in Yuma, it says Vishnos Rishayim Tiktzarena, that the years of the wicked will be shortened. That's referring to the times of the Beis Hamikdash Sheni, not the first, but the second Beis Hamikdash, that there was more than 300 Kohanim Gedolim, Rashi says, and each one of them hardly even survived a very long time because they kept dying. So therefore, all of a sudden, because of that, we kept taking all this extra money from the tzibur because all these Kohanim Gedolim kept dying. Again, it's an interesting part because it's only it's a small sacrifice in relation to all the other stuff going on. But nonetheless, because this is what was happening, and so many Kohanim Gedolim were dying, Kikinu the Gabi Yarshim. We ended up saying, you know what, let the Yarshim start paying it. Once they saw that they were being negligent in this matter, which means they were basically saying, forget it, I'm not gonna do it. So therefore, all of a sudden, because if you rely on the Yarshim of Rishayim may not be interested either in contributing. So therefore, Ukma Adaraisa, we put it back into the Din Daraisa, which was that we collected again from the tzibur. Okay, so that's the basic answer. The Alpara, and then we just break this down. Among the 7 takanos, we find when it comes to a para, shlihi mu'alin ba'afra, that we say there's no din me'ila on its ashes. You're not going to be chayav a carbon me'ila for getting hana from it. So deraisa, what do you mean? That's a takana. That's also deraisa, the sanya. Chatas he malamed shemu'alin ba, right? He ba mu'alin. So what is the mu'alin ba? You're mu'alin on it. He ba mu'alin, but afra ain't mu'alin. So what do you mean? There shouldn't be any me'ila on the ashes. We see it clearly from the psukim. So what do you mean it's a din d'Rabbanan? So Ravashi shay tekanas havi deraisa ba mu'alin ba afra ain't mu'alin. Originally said you're right. There's no din me'ila on the ashes. However, because of that, kivan dechazadika mizalzali ba. All of a sudden, people started being mizalzel the offer because avdi minei. They started using son. They used it to put it on their wounds. So, and they thought it had great medicinal purposes, and they were like, well, there's no din isser me'ila anyway. So gazer be me'ila kivan dechazadika parshi. Once they separated mistafik hazois akbu deraisa. So, but eventually, because of the whole notion of Safik Hazos, they went back to the original decree. Kamaisas, Rashi, the Tani Rav Shimon, Aboy min halishka. Okay. Okay, we'll stop there. Adkan.